Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of live interviews right here on TejanoKeyboard.com, streaming live on YouTube. This week's shirt is, I'm originally from Michigan, even though I live in Ohio, and I'm not really a sports fan, but I like the shirt. So it says Lions, Tigers, and Beers. Oh my. So,
oh my. That's cool.
And I am Rolando Revilla Jr., your host, and today's guest is none other than Mr. Rick Fuentes. Rick, how you doing?
I'm fantastic, man. I'm here on the road. I'm on the road, but we pulled over here. We're in New Mexico, and we pulled over. And thank you for having me on the show. And saludos to everybody that's logged on and watching us. And I appreciate everybody watching, and I appreciate you, Rolando. Thank you for having me, brother.
Oh, no, don't mention it, man. Thank you for doing this for me. You know, I know we've talked a little bit before. We've kind of crossed paths a few times. We've been able to jam together a few times, and that was cool.
That's
right. But you know, having you on the show is, you know, really big for me. Before we get started with the actual questions and stuff like that, I think you know this, but I started, I intended to continue with it, but I never did. There was a series that I was going to start calling them Rick's Licks, where I was going to get some of the licks that you did on accordion and then transfer them over to keyboard, you know, you playing piano accordion, so other musicians could kind of like get the onda, you know, of how you're playing some of that stuff. But man, that stuff is wild, man. It's, you know, it's it's hard for me to keep up, but you know.
Oh, thanks, man.
Yeah,
I thought that was really cool. I remember that, and that lick that you actually took out and you put on the video. That's Roberto Pulido's accordion player, Leonel Pulido. That was his lick. That was his lick. That I think I kind of Leonel Pulido. I kind of got some of the idea from him, and I kind of put my little flair to it. But yeah, that was my homage to Leonel Pulido, man. He rest in peace.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So Leonel, he played diatonic and he played chromatic, right? So yeah. I'm assuming the lick, because it had a lot of chromatic, like, or what was it like?
Yeah.
Whatever, that sort of thing.
Yeah.
He was probably doing it like on a chromatic, right?
It was probably a chromatic. You're right. Yeah, I didn't think about that. I just heard it on a recording. I heard it on a recording somewhere. But yeah, you're right. It had to have been a chromatic to do that, to do those half steps there.
Yeah.
You know.
And so let me ask you this: how'd you get started? Because I know most people. I mean, maybe some people know about your history. Some people don't. But you're not a Texas native, right?
Yeah, that's right. I'm from San Jose, California. And my dad Brown Express is the name of my band now, and that was my dad's band. My dad was from Brownsville, Texas, and that's why I got the Tejano roots in me. You know, my dad migrated to San Jose, California. I would guess early '60s, I guess. Then I was born much later. No, but he had a band called Brown Express, and he had a lady named Chavela who used to play the accordion in his band, and she would sing. And when I was a kid growing up, you know, my dad would record albums, and I would learn all his songs. He would put out an album, and I'd get that 8-track tape, put it in, and I would learn all the licks, every song. You know, the only thing is I only knew Brown Express songs. Those are the only songs I know how to play on the keyboard. And it was really, really simple, because it was like they had this style of doing harmonies. All their intros were like harmonies with accordion or saxophone and the organ. So so I got to play all that, and then tragically, my dad, they had an accident, rollover accident in the early '80s, and I was pretty young, and um, everybody told me that I had to take over, follow my dad's footsteps and all that, and so I did. I ended up playing with Chavela. Chavela was my dad's vocalist. She had her band, Chavela Grupo Express. She had continued on with her band. And when I was around, I don't know, I guess 18, I started playing with Chavela, man. I got to travel all over the country. It was really, really cool, being on the road with her. I played with Chavela, and then she had an accident in the early '90s. We were doing a photo shoot, and we were doing a we were doing a photo shoot at a ranch, and she was on a horse, and the horse got scared. She had an accident, and the horse took off running. She fell off, and she was killed. May she rest in peace. I mean, and about 2 or 3 months later, Ruben Ramos was going to San Jose, California. He was doing a tour to California, and I knew Skeeter and these guys through Little Joe's camp, and Skeeter. They knew me, and Skeeter sent me some cassettes and CDs of Ruben Ramos music and said, "Hey, man, here, where Joe Ramos couldn't make the gig. Joe Ramos is Ruben's keyboard player, man, which is, El Maestro of Joe Ramos. You know who that is."
Absolutely.
And he couldn't make it because he was working for the state, so they hired me, and I played that weekend in California with Ruben. Man, and I got my bag, I got my stick and my little handkerchief, and got my stuff, and like a hobo. I said, "I'm going back to Texas with you guys, man." And they didn't believe me, and I did. Through some other people, I ended up staying in Austin, moved to Austin, and pretty much Ruben Ramos got suckered into hiring me full time because I came back with them, and I think Ruben has a big heart, man, and Ruben became like a father to me. I played with Ruben for a couple of years, and then I joined Fandango USA. I joined Fandango USA. I played with Ruben for a couple of years, and then in '95 I joined Fandango when they were in their prime, man. They were kicking butt, and Valde Munoz and Hugo, man. It was such an honor to play with them, especially Hugo. Hugo Guerrero was my idol, man. He's when I was around 14, 15, I saw him on TV in San Jose. I'd never heard of him. I never seen him. And then Johnny Canales, the Johnny Canales show was still on over there in San Jose. Mm-hmm. And I see Fandango, and I see Hugo, and I hear him playing these chords and 4-part harmonies, and he's playing a piano accordion. I'm thinking, dude, I know how to play the piano. I bet I can play that, right? So Hugo was a big influence on me, and so I joined Fandango, man, and that was a lot of fun. That was a lot of fun playing keys for them. Mm-hmm. And then I played with them for a couple of years. Then I came back to Ruben Ramos, and I played with Ruben for 20-something years. We were together for a long time, I did the Ruben Ramos thing for a long time, and we had a lot of. In 2000, I started producing his music. So for the past 20 years, I pretty much produced and arranged all of his music. Up until 2 or 3 years ago, I left and brought back my dad's band, Brown Express, and we've been on the road and touring, except for this year. As a matter of fact, I was hoping to see you this summer. We were going to be in Michigan somewhere. We were going to Ohio. We were going to Chicago, and of course, all that got canceled with the virus. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Most people know me from Ruben Ramos. I mean, that's never gonna go away.
I remembered you for the Fandango days, and when you were talking that you initially were playing with Ruben Ramos, I was like, wait a minute, I thought he played with Fandango. You see, I didn't realize that you had started with Ruben and then went to Fandango and then came back. But that's pretty cool. As Cindy Herrera says, and the rest is history. So
the rest is history.
That's Jesse's wife there.
Jesse, Jesse's wife,
Chewy, Jesus. Also want to send a shout out.
My brother.
Absolutely. I want to send a shout out going out to ES Tuning and Repair, going out to Eddie Preciado. It says, saludos, guys. Also, saludos to...
What's up, Eddie? I know Eddie. I remember Eddie. We met him in Milwaukee a couple years back.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Great accordion tuner, and we can even talk about that maybe a little bit later because I know that we've kind of talked about it. I mean, this is more of a keyboard channel, but I mean, for people who play piano,
it's a keyboard accordion.
Yeah, exactly. Keyboard accordion.
Oh.
It says, it says All right, what's up, guys? Going, and that's from Fonz Hernandez. He says Rick's lines are smooth AF. So we all know what
Oh,
that
thank
means.
you. I appreciate that.
Uh,
Thank you.
so thanks, Fonz, for tuning in, and you've been on here a few times. So thank you for the questions. Thank you for the comments.
Awesome.
So when you were playing with Fandango USA, was that during that transitional time when Hugo was kind of like in and out of the group, or were you there solely when Hugo was there? Because I remember he had
You
left
know,
and did party band for a little bit.
Ugo had just came back to Fandango because when in the let me see, around somewhere around 90, 91, I played with Chavela. We played in Phoenix, Arizona, with los Tigres del Norte, Chavela Group Express, and Fandango USA. And I didn't know that they were playing there. We drove up to the salon. I think it was called the old Corona or something like that, like Corona in Phoenix. When we
The
drove up,
COVID.
I saw the sign that said Tigres del Norte, Chavela, there's a Fandango USA, man. I saw Fandango USA. I nearly jumped up out of my seat. I was thrilled, man. I was like, wow, what? We're playing with Fandango USA? What are they doing over here in Phoenix? They're at the Tejano band, you know? And I was a huge fan of, of the music, and that's when I first, but I didn't know Hugo wasn't with them. Jerry de la Rosa was playing with them, man. Jerry, do you remember Jerry de la Rosa?
Oh yeah,
That's
of
one of my
course.
one of my good friends, super talented. I love that guy, man. He still makes me laugh when I think about him, man. Real great guy. Jerry was playing with them, and I was a little bummed out that Hugo wasn't there, but they sounded great. It was Balde and the guys. Hugo, so that's when I found out that Hugo left. I didn't even know he wasn't in the band. And then was like, he came back. So when I joined, he had just come back, I think, and the song that was hitting when I joined was Te Amaré, Te Amaré
Oh
un
yeah.
millón de veces. That was the song that was really hot when I joined. Charanga had already been recorded a couple of years prior to that, and which was a big hit, of course. That was the biggest hit, La Charanga. But yeah, Hugo had just. He was back with Balde. They were back together, and they were in their prime, man. We were traveling all over the place, going into Mexico and stuff, and it was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
And and not to turn this conversation into a bit being more about Fandango and stuff,
Oh,
but a lot of people associate Fandango with like their cumbias, like we said, te amaré un millón de veces, and
right, Charanga.
in charanga and stuff like that. But what they don't realize is that prior to La Charanga, they were like an awesome like ranchera band. Tres
Yeah,
Besitos and Quien
yeah,
Te Dice. Like those were
yeah,
like the jams. And even after
yeah. And it had those cool keyboard chords in there too. Hugo was awesome
yeah,
on
like
that stuff. That style, man,
well,
that they developed was awesome.
well like what was it? Was it where it goes "Quien te dice?" Or or something
Yeah,
like 13th now, right?
yeah,
Or
yeah.
I
And
forgot what the
13.
chords were, but yeah, he
Yeah,
was good for doing all those really
yeah,
nice chords. And
yeah.
but anyway, yeah. So you were there when you were playing with them. Did you do some of that older repertoire, or do you think that by that point,
That's a good question. You know what? Can't Dice was probably one. We didn't do it, and we always wanted to, but we didn't do that one. No. But we did like songs like Yo no te pido la luna.
oh
We
yeah,
had to
of
do that one because
course,
that was their first hit. That
yeah.
was on their first album. But we did some of the cool tunes. Yeah. What song was it? Like we did da 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 da.
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah.
That's some
Bachata
cool chords
Rosa,
in there.
yeah.
Yeah, Bachata Rosa, yeah. We did those kind of tunes, and yeah, we did a bunch of accordion tunes, but yeah, we didn't get to do that one. We always wanted to, though. Always wanted to. As a matter of fact, we do it after Fandango USA. Whenever I sit in with Hugo, whenever if I'm jamming with them, we've done it after Fandango USA. When I jam with Hugo, I'll be playing bass or guitar, and we've done it. We've done it then. Every time we do it, man, it's a great feeling. It's a great song, and it's brings back memories.
Yeah. And then then you transitioned over to Ruben's group, and you started playing there. Were you primarily accordionist, or were you kind of doing both accordion and keyboard? Because I know you were saying that Joe Ramos was the
Play keys,
yeah,
yeah.
the keyboardist, but
Yeah,
he's also the guitarist, right?
yeah. Well, when I first joined Ruben, they didn't even know that I played accordion. They I joined playing keyboards, and then when I came back to Texas, when Joe Ramos the following week came back into the band, and they put me on guitar. I was playing guitar because Joe Ramos was doing the accordion licks on the keyboard. You remember that? Joe Ramos would play the accordion on the keyboards,
Mm-hmm.
and that was they were known for that, and it sounded killer. But nobody could play that accordion stuff like Joe Ramos, on the ARP Omni keyboard. Yeah, I don't know if you ever heard of that,
Yep.
but that was the name of the keyboard, ARP Omni, right? ARP, yeah, ARP. Anyway, and so I was playing guitar when I first joined Ruben, and then I went Fandango playing keyboards, and I like to say that's when I was in my prime, man, because I had 4 keyboards, and that was I don't think I could do it now, but but yeah. When I came back to Ruben, I was primarily playing the accordion, I think, and drum machine and whatever. I stopped playing guitar, but. Yeah, Ruben. Yeah, Joe did all the keyboard part. Ruben is, because since Ruben has the horn section, there's not a lot of room for like a whole lot of keyboard leads and stuff like that. There's not
Mm-hmm.
really a lot of that in Ruben's music. But yeah, that's and the Weedle, and I play the Weedle, of course, for Ruben.
Yeah, an all-important instrument to every cumbia, right? We also got
Dude, you know what? I'll tell you one thing I learned a long time ago, man. The most important instrument in a cumbia is the Weedle. It really is, because you can literally dance to a Weedle by itself.
yeah.
I don't know if you can dance to the bass by itself or the conga, but a Weedle is what's driving, man. It's driving, man, and so yeah, I think it's important.
No, and that's why I didn't mean it with any kind of sarcasm. It is
Oh yeah,
the
of course,
all-important instrument to a cumbia. You know what I mean? It's
course.
like, even today's modern cumbias, whatever, with even that like sort of like lag, sort of like
Yeah, yeah,
the
yeah, yeah.
Guido is the one that's kind of
That
like
swing.
leading that sort of like whatever Colombian vallenato sort of whatever.
Yeah, it's got that little swing in there, man. That's what they're
Yeah.
doing a lot in San Antonio too, and it looks great. I like it. It makes you want to dance.
The swing is on a different beat though. It's like it's not a jazz swing where like the ands are late. It's like it's early.
Oh yeah, yeah.
It's weird, man.
You're right.
But
They're
it's
almost
really
like
cool.
triplets, man. They're almost like triplets,
Almost like triplets, like a delayed
Yeah.
triplet. Yeah, that's really interesting. We got a comment right here from none other than Mr. Tejano Highway 281, Chris Rodriguez, who says,
Chris, what's up, Chris?
he says, I met Rick when he was with Fandango, 25 years of knowing Rick, and
Twi-
he's never taught
Yep.
me anything on the keys.
Oh shoot, he needs to teach me, man. Chris needs to teach me. Shoot, Chris is awesome, man. He's awesome on the keyboards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I met Chris a long time ago. Yeah, I remember meeting him. And as a matter of fact, he lived where I was staying in Donna. When I was staying with Fandango, I was staying in Donna. And he lived across the street. He lived right down the street, so we would hang out and stuff. And I'm not going to incriminate. I'm not going to incriminate he and I, but we, we hung out a lot.
Yeah, that sounds like it was a blast, man. Especially
Yeah.
during that time when Tejano was like in its like golden age. And actually, as a matter
Definitely,
of fact,
man.
when I think back to those times, I don't think of it as Tejano music, and maybe I'll get some backlash for saying this, but to me, it's always been La Onda Chicana. You know what I mean? Because
Of course.
like you being from California and like me being from the Midwest, like it's a type of music that we love, right? But like
Yeah, definitely, man.
it has a lot of influences from outside of Texas. You know what I mean? Granted, all the groups from Texas have the stronghold on the name and the style and stuff like that. But a lot of people attribute the influence of R&B and jazz and all that stuff. And hey, Motown was right here in Detroit, Michigan, just 30,
Sure.
30 minutes up the road from Toledo, and Kansas City jazz, all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I've kind of digressed here. So these days, man, you're doing Brown Express. You guys are continuing the legacy of your dad. I saw a video the
Yeah.
other day where you're playing accordion, you're playing keys and stuff like that. I see you guys kind of doing like more of a conjunto progressive sort of thing. But do you still find yourself, doing stuff on keys? I mean, I know you have it there, but
Yeah, as a matter of fact, it's funny you say that because we are this next album that we started working on. It's very progressive, and it's gonna be something like a cross between Fandango USA and Conjunto Bernal or something, you know. So we are the next album is gonna be very progressive. This last album we did was called Tribute. It was a 20-song tribute CD I did to the original Brown Express. And I basically did all the original arrangements that my dad did. Very, very simple organ and accordion and saxophone type stuff. It wasn't really Tejano. Back then it was Chicano, is what they were considered. It was a Chicano band.
Right.
And so this next album, because I got to get it out of my system, I got to do a die-hard hardcore Tejano album, and that's what's coming up next.
Awesome.
And there's going to be a bunch of keyboards on that and a bunch of chord progression, but it's going to be very progressive. I wouldn't call it commercial. I wouldn't say it's going to be very commercial, and I don't care. I don't care. I've been doing this so long. We've done commercial stuff for years and years, and I'm at that point in my career right now that I don't care. I'm not trying to impress anybody but myself at this point. You know, I just want to put out good music because there are fans that still like hardcore Tejano music. You know, they're out there. You know, so yeah, so we're working on that. You know, going back to speaking of Chicano music, you know. You know that the record labels are the ones that started naming it Tejano music, not the people.
Right.
It's always been Chicano music. It was always Chicano. Even the Tejanos called it Chicano. But then the labels back in the '80s, they started labeling it Tejano because it was Texas music, you know. Yeah. And that's what Ruben says. And so I tend to believe him. Ruben Ramos, he has said that. He has talked about that when they asked him, and he says that it's the labels that named it Tejano, you know.
Yeah, and you know, and I think too from a marketing standpoint, because the Mexican Revolution was not always the Mexican Revolution, right? Because there was a Mexican Revolution, and then it was the Texas Revolution for a little bit, and then they went back to the Mexican Revolution. And I find that interesting. I think it's like you said, it's from a marketing standpoint, but also I don't know. You know, I may be off here on my history or you know my understanding of the demographics, but there's some Mexican Americans that find the term Chicano to be derogatory, and I think maybe that might have been part of the reason for why they were like, well, we can't really call it Chicano music, you know, per se, because that might offend somebody, you know, as where like you and I, we don't, you know, we associate with that because you know that label is not demeaning to us, you know what I mean? But apparently to some it was. So if, maybe that was
really
maybe that was one of the reasonings why they decided to go the route of calling it Tejano music, because I mean, what are they going to call it, like Mexico Americano Música or whatever? It's like you know, if they're like, hey, Tejano, because I mean, if you think about it, even like La Sombra when they were in their prime, right? Like they were, what were they? They were like the Windy City Boys, right? But they never like were like, oh, we're Tejano, right? Because they're from Illinois. You know, we're from Aurora, man. You know, so yeah. But
that's interesting.
Yeah, before we get back to the interview, I have some more comments and shout outs. The music maker says, "What's up, Rick? This is Adrian Everett from saludos from Amarillo, Texas."
And, what's up, Adrian?
And also, Mr. Eddie Preciado from ES Tuning says, I agree. A cumbia is not a cumbia without the güiro and congas and cowbell. So he's agreeing with us.
Right. That's right.
Let's see. Oh, your brother there, Mr. Chris Rivera, says, thanks for the ride home, brother
Chris.
Rick.
Cool, yeah. Hey, yeah, we played in Alamo, Texas, in the Valley this past weekend, and my drummer Jeremy couldn't make it, so we took Chris. And long story short, we got stranded on the way back. I'm sure you've been through that before. The alternator went out, so we were stranded out in the middle of nowhere in South Texas, and we ended up staying in the valley, spending the night, and fixing the alternator the next day. By the time we got back over to Austin, Chris didn't have his right to Waco anymore, so we had to override. But yeah, it was an interesting weekend.
So, you know, I mean, I know that when you were with Ruben, right, you did take on some of the responsibilities of, say, like musical director, right? I mean, I don't know if that was your official title or whatever, but you know, I think they had an organization that had managers that would take care of stuff like that, is I guess what I'm getting at. But now that you have your own band,
Hmm.
like you have to accept the blunt end of whatever things happen. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like the expenses and stuff like that. Talk to us a little bit about that. What are some of the changes that have happened from you being somebody who is just a a cog
Right.
in the wheel, so to speak, to now where it's like it's your deal.
Yeah. Well, I do have a lot of experience with work being with Ruben, because well, yeah, I learned a lot about the managing aspect of the business through Skeeter. I was working at the office, and I would work on all the contracts and all that stuff, and uh, yeah, I wouldn't call I wasn't the I was Ruben's producer, but I wouldn't say music director because we never practiced, we never rehearsed. We played all the same songs, Gastanero, Palomanero, all the same hits, and the musicians were really good. I mean, Joe, Bia, Rick Reyes was on drums at one time. And Chris, of course, Chris came in, and of course, Chris is super talented too. And so we didn't really have to practice. So there was no directing. We'd say, hey, we're going to do this song Saturday. If anything, they would learn it on their own or whatever. But the old Ramos, they're old school. They're like, they don't like to practice. They like to practice. They'd be like, I know my part. Learn your part. I don't have to practice. I know you learn your part. And we'll play it on stage. So it was kind of that kind of deal. But yeah, uh, I kind of have that old school mentality, being influenced from Ruben and stuff, and I don't like to practice either. But it's funny because with this new album that we're working on, and this new album we just got out, but and we had a whole bunch of gigs this summer. Man, we were going to California, Washington, Oregon, so we were getting ready to start a rehearsal regimen, and we were going to start learning all these songs and stuff. Man, we don't have any gigs now, so it's like we're kind of waiting until things start to pick up again, so we can rehearse and start doing the new songs on the new album and stuff like that. But but for the most part, Brown Express didn't really. We rehearsed one time, I think, before our very first gig, and that was it. Because I've always got musicians like Albert Garcia, with Chris, who helped us this weekend, Vic Nash, he helps me on guitar, Bobby Dominguez helps me a lot on bass, and these guys are all seasoned musicians, man. I mean, I can, there's not, these guys can play anything, so I would send them, we have a certain intro, I'd send it to them, and they learn it, so these, group of guys, that's why I like to work with these guys that are professional, that can play on the fly, they don't have to rehearse either.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, we are. My band's about to go through some changes and stuff as far as new material and stuff like that. The new album, and we're gonna rehearse and have we're gonna change up our show and stuff here real soon. But we're kind of just parked right now. All the gigs got canceled, and it's like we're just parked, But the good thing is we can work on new music while we're sitting home, So that's cool.
And especially like you were saying, if you have seasoned musicians that are already kind of like, they've really honed in their craft. All they really have to do is just go over the tunes and learn their part. There was a saying once that somebody told me. It's like, you practice at home and you rehearse with the band. So
rehearse with the band, right?
Don't be going through parts. Don't be wasting everybody else's time.
Exactly, man.
And so for those of you who are thinking about joining a band or just starting playing keyboard and stuff like that, always remember that as much fun as this is for everyone, playing music is supposed to be fun, and some of us do it for a living, some of us do it recreationally, and that's fine. The one thing that you have to remember is be respectful of everybody else's time. So if you put in the work and the time to learn your parts, it's only fair that everybody else do the same. Because if you show up and you're not confident in what you're doing, you're letting down the rest of the guys. And it's supposed to be a team. It's supposed to be a collaborative effort to make sure that that it's fun for everybody. And when you feel like somebody is hindering your progress, even just temporarily, it does kind of dampen the mood for the group. But that's it for my whole
I mean, definitely.
But so we were talking about, you said when you were in your prime, you set up a bunch of keyboards and stuff like that. Transitioning over to the years to what you have set up now, what were your setups like back in the Fandango day? Like, what keyboards were you using back then? Are you still using any of those same keyboards?
Yeah, I got my Core O1W. The O1W, I still got that. But I don't use the sounds. I just use the sequencer.
Okay.
I got that. It's a 6-track sequencer, and I got it down so well that I just stayed with it. But I haven't made it to like I have a Yamaha motif
Mm-hmm.
that I use, and all the sounds pretty much come from that Yamaha. And depending on what studio I work at, because for a while there I was in Clovis, New Mexico, and I had a whole bunch of keyboards there. A friend of mine has keyboards. I was using the Kronos and stuff like that. Um, uh, but back then, the Fandango days, I had my Korg 1W, and I might have had one more other keyboard. And Ugo, I was using Ugo's keyboards. He had like a Kawaii. It's Kawaii. How do you say that?
Yeah,
Kawai.
Kawhi.
And we had a Yamaha that we used for the brass, and the Kawaii was more for like piano and strings, I think. But we had 4 keyboards, and I had a little box that had MIDI. It was a MIDI box with switches. So I would actually, if I wanted to add strings to the piano, I would hit a switch. I had it organized where I hit a switch, and the pianos from the other keyboard would kick in on this. Or stuff like that.
Yeah,
If I
yeah,
wanted,
yeah.
so it had like 4 or 5 switches, and it had MIDI cables connected to all the keyboards, and I could just easily connect. Have you ever seen? Do they still make those
Yeah,
little
man.
boxes like that?
I mean, nowadays,
Right,
a lot of the stuff's happening on actual MIDI controllers, like what you're talking about, where there's
right,
knobs, faders, and buttons, and you can program them to basically do anything. If you wanted to switch a MIDI
right.
channel or layer something, you can have it all. It's all programmable now. But
Top
I think that
programmable. Yeah,
workflow is a little bit different now because you have one keyboard, and then you can have a bunch of outboard gear, or even a couple of them, so
yeah,
you can, if you're trying to play two
yeah.
different parts, or
Yeah, man, I'm outdated with my keyboards and stuff, man. I'm outdated. I think um, but it's good enough for what I do. The Yamaha motif I have is good enough. The sequencers, and stuff, and um, I've been doing it for so long that I kind of know what kind of sound I want or whatever, you know, um, I had somebody tell me one time, I still have a Roland VS 2480 that I record on. I have my computer there. I have Studio One. I'm just too lazy to go and learn it and figure it all out and stuff. I'm just doing podcasts and cumbias, man. Come on, this is, you know what I mean? So it's like, I had somebody tell me, I won't mention his name, but somebody said, man, you gotta get Pro Tools, man, and I got 10,000 snares, and this. I'm like, I look at him and I said, I only need one, man. I only need one snare. I don't have time to go through 10,000 snares to find, whatever. I'm exaggerating, but so yeah, I'm kind of old school, I would say I'm old school, but I like to think I know how to use the equipment that I have. I've been doing it for so long and stuff. So
yeah, and
but
when you're used to a certain workflow, man, like when somebody throws a wrench in that, it's kind of like it throws things off. It's just like like somebody who exclusively works on a computer, right? Like myself, like
yeah,
when I went to school, I learned a little bit like how to thread the tape through a reel to reel. And I recorded a little bit on it, but man, if today you were to put me
really,
in the studio and be like, "Hey, we're gonna record this whole album on reel to reel," it'd take me a little while just because you know what
yeah,
I mean. That's not the
definitely.
workflow that I'm used to, and the same thing.
That would be fun, man. Oh, that would be fun though.
It would be. I would love to do
Yeah,
that, but that sort of stuff, it takes a really big budget, but
yeah,
nonetheless, you do things the way that you do, and you know what? That's uniquely Rick. And and sometimes
sure.
that's part of like the signature of each musician, like
Right.
the way that they compose, the way that they arrange, the way that they record, all that stuff kind of plays into a factor, you know what I mean, where you can start listening to stuff
Yeah.
and be like, oh, that sounds like, Bob Gallarza, or oh, that sounds like Gilbert Velasquez, or that
Right.
sounds like Rick,
Right.
and so that's good, man. Like, if that's what works for you, man, then I say, just keep at it. Let's see here. We have a couple more shout outs. Mr. Michael Ibarra from Ivani Fuego is in the
Hey,
house.
Michael.
So what's up, guys?
What's up?
He said he had one of those MIDI patch bass. So that's what they
The
were
mini
called.
passion, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah, that's awesome.
next week we'll actually be having. Is it next week? Yeah, I think it's next week. Michael will be on, and he'll be doing an interview with us. Chris Rodriguez
Great.
says Hugo always used the Roland JV90. Not sure if
Yeah,
Rick used it too.
that's the one I used for the brass. Yeah, that was the one for the brass.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, the JV90. That's right.
Yeah, and then
That was when that was the charanga. And then
yeah,
actually the charanga he used. He got that one after charanga. Charanga he used that Kauai. There was a brass on the Kauai that he used the charanga on. But after he recorded that, he got that Yamaha keyboard. We started using that one.
mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was a long keyboard. Long, it was a extended one.
Yeah, it was probably like a 88 or 76 key or something like that.
Probably yeah,
Yeah.
76.
The music maker says the Roland 2480 is one of the best. I'm not sure exactly
Yeah,
what what piece of equipment he's talking to, if that's a keyboard or recording.
that's that 24 track recorder.
Oh
I have,
yeah. That's the one you were
one.
talking about. Okay, I got you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have it loaded with all these plugins. It has auto tune. I have compressors, and I have all kinds of stuff in there. So it's loaded. I mean, it's 2004 technology, but we put out some pretty cool stuff in '04. So I'm sticking with it.
But man, think about it this way, man. It doesn't matter if it's 2004 technology, because like
Yeah,
nowadays people are trying to find these old like analog like 1176 compressors and stuff that came out in like
yeah, yeah,
the 60s, and
yeah.
these Neumann microphones from way back when,
Hmm.
and people
Hmm.
are looking for that older technology, you know what I mean? So I
Yeah,
think that music gear to a certain extent is timeless. Like, there's
yeah.
certain things for
Right.
certain
I mean, and
applications. And
the bottom line, man, es el mono el que cuenta.
el
It's the
mono,
musician,
that's
man.
right.
Whatever, if I could do the same quality stuff I could in Pro Tools as I could on an 8-track recorder. I mean, you just got to know what you're doing. I mean, and you just got to know what you're doing. And I'm pretty much, I do Tejano music, I do cumbias, and I'm pretty much going to stick to that. That's what I love to do. I arrange for other people. I have a bunch of projects here for other people that I do on the side to make a living, right?
Hmm.
And, um, it's all, I choose the gigs I want to do. Like I'm at a point in my career now where I have to like your music for me to produce it for you. I'm not just going to take your money, and I have to like the way you sing. I have to like the way and so I'm hardcore Tejano, man. If somebody wants a little more norteño or a little more this or that, I just won't take it. So now I want to enjoy when I'm arranging. If I needed to, produce big stuff, I could. If there's projects I feel I have that maybe require a better production, I'll go record it with Gilbert or somebody else. I'll go to another studio. I do that a lot too. If I feel that my studio isn't adequate or whatever, I'll take it somewhere else. Record drums and stuff like that. So yeah, but I just like Tejano, man. That's how I'm proud of it. I like doing it. I don't like recording other types of music or playing other types of music. To be honest, I'm just a hardcore Tejano musician that sticks to my roots, man. So I'm happy with my Roland 2480.
Yeah, and listen, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Especially, your work speaks for itself. When you were with
Thank
Ruben,
you.
some of that work actually got nominated for Grammys, right? Or was that?
I did 6 albums that have been nominated by Grammy, and one of them won. We have a Grammy that we won a Grammy. So yeah, man, and it was that 2480. Let me tell you,
Mm-hmm.
or at least some of it was there. Like I'll start stuff on there, and then I'll do drum tracks at Gilbert's. Or here lately, I've been using like Aaron Holler. I'll send him a wave file. He does the tracks, man. Great work,
Absolutely.
But yeah, man, that was album, the class tag, the one, and then on the proud. Let me see, like yeah, I mean, literally, I mean, gosh, I guess almost every album that I produced for Ruben has had a nomination. I have like 8 medallions, those medallions from the Recording Academy. So yeah, they've been getting nominated. Yeah, they were nominated.
And like you
And
said, es el mono, right? That reminds me of
it's a mono. Yeah,
that reminds me of a
yeah.
story, because I help out some mariachis, to make a little extra money on the side. And actually, well, mariachi pays really good, but that's neither here nor
What do
there,
you
right?
play? What instrument do you play?
I started
When
off
you do
playing
that?
accordion with them, but I play guitarron now.
Uh-huh.
I learned how to play
No way,
guitarron.
man! You play guitarron,
I do. I have two
man.
guitarrones that I play.
I couldn't pay that to save my life, man. Hey, I got a project for you, by the way. I'm gonna say I got a couple of mariachi. Monica, my wife Monica, I'm doing an album for her, and we have a couple of mariachi tunes. I'm gonna send it to you so you can do the guitarron.
If you need a guitarronero, I got you, man. I got you for real.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
And
Awesome.
but they would say, you know, if somebody gets a new traje or something like that, they're like, oh no, hombre,
Yeah.
se ve bien chingón el traje, nomás falta el mono.
Falta el mono. Yeah, yeah. That's it, man. That's an old musician saying, man.
Yeah, nomás
That's an
falta
old
el
musician
mono.
saying. It's el mono.
Yeah,
You know.
exactly. And
Yeah.
these days you're playing a lot of accordion, of course, and that's what people kind of know you for, you know, and you're one of the few accordionists that I know that can play a piano accordion and make it sound like a diatonic accordion, you know what I mean? And not just in terms of playing, but in terms of the tuning too. You know, you do your own. We talked about this. You know,
Yeah.
you do your own tuning and kind of, you know, do your own thing to kind of get that sound. It's kind of like you've honed in. You kind of like, you know, you fine tune the craft of like getting that estilo like on your instrument. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
that's pretty cool, man.
Yeah, well, so pretty much any piano accordion that you find, like, so is in tune to the Tejano way. Accordion, diatonic accordions, bad accordions, those are tuned to Tejano. They're all, most of them sound like are tuned the Tejano way, right, or norteño, right? They're pretty common. The tuning, but piano accordions, it's hard. You can't find those tuned like the Tejano. Those are tuned in octaves. Most all of them, right? They're most all of them. They're not, especially the older accordions. And I have to play the older accordions because the brand of accordion I play is a Loduca from Milwaukee. Loduca Brothers. I don't know if you've heard of that, being in that area, but Michael Loduca had an accordion school. He taught kids back in the, I guess, 50s or 60s, and he wanted an accordion for his children, for the kids that were learning, and the accordions were too big, so he had custom made. They were manufactured in Italy, but he would sell them with his name on them out of Milwaukee. But they were made in Italy, and he designed an accordion for a child. And the keyboard, normally a full size piano keyboard is what, like 18, 19 inches, 17 to no, like 18 or 19 inches is the full size accordion. Real big, right? They're real heavy,
Like
real
Steve
heavy,
Urkel.
real big. Right. Lawrence Welk,
Lawrence Welk.
so he had some design for children made for 6 to 10 year olds. What it said on. I ran into some literature on it, and they're real small thickness, man. The keys are real small. I mean, I think you've seen my accordion, and but it's high quality. It's heavy. It's a high quality accordion, but made for a child, and that's the one I play. And so I play that one because it's easier to make that sound like a button accordion than it is a full size, because I can do octaves much easier. Like, button accordions from one octave to the next, it's just this far apart. It's not far at all. Yeah, it's not far at all.
And on a keyboard, it would be
so
on the full
right. Yeah. So I play that. So those accordions, I find those on eBay. I've had 2 or 3 of them already, and I buy them on eBay. They're from the 50s. So this guy Michael Loduca had those made, and there's still a whole bunch of them around in the U.S. because I find them on eBay all the time. I think he has passed away since. So when I first got my first Loduca accordion, I tuned it myself. I got the blocks out. You have to, in order to put the reeds in unison, you gotta make the little blocks, the little spaces where the reeds go. You gotta make them smaller because the reeds are gonna be smaller, right?
The size of the reed plate.
So you have to add wood to it. It's just a lot of work. So I did 2 or 3 accordions like that, and then I don't have time anymore. So I take my accordions to Gus Escobar in Shirts, Texas. I don't know if you heard that. He does like AJ's accordion, Dave Farias. He tunes a lot of accordions. So I send my stuff to him now. So, but like if I have a reed or two that goes out, I need to fix it. I'll fix it myself. But for the most part, I don't really tune them anymore because. Especially if it's a new accordion, I have to have it all changed, all formatted. That's time consuming.
It really
time
is.
consuming. it could take 12 hours to do that kind of a job like that, on the accordion. So,
Yeah.
yeah, este, Agustin Escobar from Shirts, Texas. Highly recommend him. Great tuner, man. Great accordion tuner. And he
Awesome.
makes bajos too. He makes bajos too.
Right. Oh,
Yeah.
cool, man. That's sweet. And so, accordion tuning is a lot has a lot to do with it. And like I said, this is primarily a keyboard channel, but this is things that I've actually talked about on this channel
Sure.
because I think I did an episode or two in regards to piano accordion versus diatonic accordion and how to get a similar sound for people who are trying to play piano accordion. And I play diatonic. I feel most comfortable with diatonic, but my
Yeah.
primary when I first started was piano accordion. And
Yeah.
so I have a couple piano accordions. I have a Dino Buffetti, 5 switch, so you can get the
Oh,
norteño sort of
nice.
sounds and stuff like that. But I also have one that belonged to my dad. Is a Honer. It's just like a 2 octave, like you know what I mean, small,
Uh-huh.
But it's like it was called the Student 2, so it has the 2 sets of reeds, almost like the Corona 2. So it's the same thing. It's that like
Oh.
I have the Honer tuned up like a diatonic where it's real dry, you know what I mean? The tuning's
Yeah.
pretty close. And then with like the Buffetti, it's a little bit of a wetter tuning to do more like that
Yeah.
norteño stuff. And so
Right.
I can cover most bases with those two accordions as far as sound is concerned. But like as far as pisadas and stuff, it's like I said, even though I started on piano accordion, I feel most comfortable on diatonic. But you've got
Really?
that
Yeah.
but you've got that down, man. Like you've got from all the years of playing those licks and stuff, you got.
Yeah, thank you. I started. I used to play button accordion a little bit. I learned some songs, especially all the Brown Express songs, my dad's songs. I learned them on the button accordion when I was a little kid. And then I saw Hugo Guerrero play the piano accordion. And I was like, hey. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, I think Chavela bought me my first, because when I joined Chavela playing organ, I think she bought me my first piano accordion, Chavela, and I started, that's when I started picking up, started, playing with it, and then I took the keys, I took the keys off, and I put popsicle sticks under the keys. Well, you know that, I put popsicle sticks to give it that click sound, so it sounded like an old Hunter Corona type accordion. And, yeah, definitely that's one way to make it sound like a button accordion. Putting the wood, taking that felt material out of. There's a way. Usually your keys just pop right off. There's a certain way you press them, and those keys pop off. Unless it's got the little bar, that bar where they hook up to. Some accordion depends on the design, but most accordions you just pop off the key and take that felt material off and just get some wood glue and some popsicle sticks and glue that sucker on there, and it works all right. Oh, I can't
Sorry
hear
about
you.
that. Yeah,
Oh,
there.
there you
I'm
go.
sorry. Yeah. No, but I was gonna say no, but you make that work. Well, it sounds good. It sounds very. I'll use the word authentic. To that style.
Thank you.
You know. The music maker here was asking, what patches do you use for brass?
I have the brass. I use this brass patch. I really like is from the Yamaha motif. It's called Small Brass
Small brass.
Ensemble. I think it's called.
Hmm.
I think it's called
Hmm.
Small Brass Ensemble, something like that. And I really like it because it has because it has, if I hit it hard, it has that velocity deal where if you hit it hard, it has that real bright tone of the horns. And when I do horn arrangements, when I sequence horn arrangements, I do one horn. I record one horn at a time to give it that feel because you can't really play horn parts, 4-part horns or 5-part horns. It just doesn't sound right if you do them all at the same time, right? It sounds like a keyboard.
Yeah.
But if you do the horns one at a time, I'll do the lead trumpet part, and then I'll do the second trumpet, and then I'll do sax and trombone, baritone. And once you add all that and you do them all separate, and you got to feel them different, right? Like the trombone, you got to bend the trombone to sound like a trombone, right? Certain ways. And when you put it all together, man, it sounds like a real horn section. So that's what I do to get a good brass sound. It's actually, if you hear my recordings, arrangements that I've done or whatever, it's usually like at least 6 horn parts,
Hmm.
put together, the saxes and all that. So the brass, it sounds It'll
So
sound
so all those
kind of
brass
big.
sounds, are they from the motif, or do you layer that, like say if you do like most of the horn parts or sequence and then have like maybe one or two live horn players or
I do that sometimes. Yeah, I do that sometimes. There's been times where I put real saxes, or it just depends where I'm at, who I'm doing it with, and if some trumpet player happens to be in the area or something, get them in there. Just different factors,
yeah,
but
absolutely.
but for the most part, it's all from the motif from the Yamaha. Yeah,
Yeah,
all the horn
man,
parts.
and that sounds, and you're absolutely right, because that's the thing is that like um so I'll share one of my secrets with everybody as far as what I used to do. I don't really do it much anymore, but you know, I played a lot in cover bands. I still, technically am
Uh huh.
playing in a cover band. I mean, we have some albums out, but whatever. But um,
Yeah.
when you're trying to copy, say, if you're trying to play something with brass or something with real sax, the one thing that I've always noticed is that when you can get a brass patch, right, and you play and you can play more than one note, but it's all those sounds playing multiple notes, and I think that's what makes the keyboard sound so uh unrealistic,
Right.
and that's what you were talking about, doing the parts individually. So this is what I've
Individually.
figured out, and I don't know if I might have made a video on this, but at least with the Korgs, right, with some of the later Korg technology, you know how some of the sounds are monophonic, like where you can only play one note at a
Yeah.
time. Well,
Yeah.
on some of the Korgs, you can actually tell it to do a priority to one note. Like, say, always pick the highest note or always pick the lowest note. You
Oh,
know,
really? Okay.
so when I hit
Cool.
a bunch of notes together, the one sound will pick just the high note to play. So, like, say if I have like say like a like a synth brass, and I want like a J
Uh
pedal
huh.
sort of thing with like a sax on top, I'll
Uh huh.
make the sax monophonic and have it priority to the high note. So I'll be playing two or three notes at a time, but the sax is only
Wow,
playing the
that's
top note.
cool, man.
Then you can blend in
Really?
how much of that sax you want, and then, well, you already know when you program it, you can put more reverb on the sax
Sure.
or more, whatever,
Sure.
and EQ it differently from other things, and
Right.
so you get more of a feel like that. But also, if you're talking about arranging horns and stuff like that, you can also do it.
Um.
The same thing with trumpet. You could have like your bass brass sound, right? And then have a lead
Uh huh.
trumpet on top, and then have like
Yeah.
maybe a trombone on the bottom playing the low note. And so
Yeah.
so in a live situation, you could be playing chords with one hand and playing the brass part with the other, but it'll still sound like one trumpet playing just the one note
Yeah,
on
that's
top.
really cool, man. I didn't know that. That is really cool to know.
Yeah,
Another thing I do when I'm for record, it doesn't apply for playing live, but when I'm recording, another thing I do is um, I'll purposely, when I do the lead trumpet part, I'm trying to think like a trumpet player, but and I'm a little bit late on some parts, a little bit late, and then the second trumpet, I'll quantize the second trumpet, so the second trumpet's always on beat, whatever. But and then the sax, I'll kind of maybe play a little ahead, so they're not all the same. They all
right.
have a different feel. I purposely do it that way, so it sounds like five or six different people playing, and not the same guy playing. Because if you're gonna play, you're gonna add those parts, and you're doing the exact same articulation and stuff.
Mhm. Or when they're
Then
all
then
quantized, when they're all super tight, then it just sounds like a keyboard.
yeah,
It's like it sounds like
yeah. So
yeah.
I purposely leave stuff off. I do that all the time. I purposely leave stuff late or too early, whatever. I leave it like that because when it's all put together, man, it sounds great, man. It
It
sounds
does.
to me. Well, to me, it does
It
anyway.
has more soul to it.
And
You know what I mean? It just has
yeah,
more feeling.
yeah,
Because when
right.
everything's too perfect, then that's when it's
Right, right. So I'll have one horn quantized sometimes, and that's usually my second trumpet. I don't know why. The lead trumpet, I like to leave that one loose. I like to leave that one because the lead trumpet guy is the one that's has room to do the vibrato, has room to do the be a little more expressive.
Mm.
But yeah. So that's kind of
A lot of
it's
that
kind
comes
of
a lot of that comes too from being around horn players, you know what I mean, and
yeah,
understanding the horn arrangements, you know what I mean? Because
exactly.
if you're just in the realm of keyboard, you know, you have to kind of like as a producer be able to understand why things sound the way that they sound
Yeah,
and how
yeah.
to achieve that sound. The same thing like we were
Right.
talking about, like I mean, we're talking about details here when you're saying that I
Right.
took
Yeah.
the
You
teclas
know,
off
I
of my
was
accordion and put popsicle sticks. Like those are little
right.
minor details,
Few details.
you know. And that's the thing, is that those little details are the one little extra spice that kind of like, you know,
Yeah.
that makes it
Yeah.
extra, you know. But
Sure, man. Sure.
anyways, yeah. And so being around horn players, listening to
Yeah.
accordionists, listening to other musicians, and
Yeah.
understanding
Yeah, but it
how.
depends on what horn players are hanging around too. It depends on the horn players. It's in the mono because there's a lot of horn. You know, my pet peeve, man. What I don't like, man, is when an arranger or a horn section or even the keyboard for that matter, when they do the harmonies, there's certain unwritten rules, man, about harmonies, and so you put this. You got two trumpets, and then the third that they set on, we call it, was really the five, right? It was usually the sax, maybe an alto sax or something.
Right.
There's times that alto sax ends on the wrong notes. You know what I mean? Sometimes
Yeah.
that harmony is not right, and musically it's okay to I don't know if you understand what I'm saying, but like there's some part like that third part has to be just right.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
and there's a lot of people that don't erase that third. But then you have jazz musicians, like for example, Latin Breed, that did a lot of those parts that were a little bit weird, but they can do it because there's Latin Breed and they're jazz.
Yeah.
But in the ranchera world, in the mariachi, just like mariachi world, there's certain ways you harmonize your trumpets. The two trumpets of mariachis, sometimes the two trumpets, they have to go in fifths. They gotta change parts.
Change from
They
a fifth
move
to a
around.
fourth or something. The interval does have to change.
Yeah.
So, like one
Yeah.
thing that I learned when I was doing, like, you know, my undergrad study, and I was studying music and stuff like that, was they were talking about counterpoint melody. What's the word I'm looking for? Arranging for that. And one thing that they talked about, like in classical music, that there was an unspoken rule where, well, not an unspoken rule, it was a rule for counterpoint melody, was that you're not supposed to have parallel fifths. So as an assignment, sometimes we'd get like a bass note and we'd get a melody, and then we would have to fill in the arrangement, whether it be 2, 3, 4, 5 parts, and then you could never have, you know, parallel fifths. So like a C and a
Really?
G, a C and a G couldn't go to an A and a D. You know what I mean? Because it's
Right.
parallel. You know what I mean? And I think for a
Yeah.
lot of reasons of what you're talking about, it just, to the ear, it doesn't land right. So for example, if
Right.
you're using a lot of parallel harmony, like, so for example, if you're in the key of C, right, and you've got C, E, and G, right, if you're gonna go down a step, you know what I mean, you're not gonna hit a B.
B,
Right,
D, and
right.
F, yeah.
The B is gonna be kind of off from the. I mean, it's not
Yeah.
off. You're playing the major seventh, right?
Right,
But
right.
sometimes you don't want that major seventh. You have to have.
Mhm.
You have to be
Mhm.
either on one of the root notes.
Right, stay on that G. Stay on that G.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Or maybe you can invert the G a different way to, you know, so it's
Sure.
like B, D, and G as opposed to like B, D, and F. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because then
Yeah.
that F isn't quite right in the harmony. If you're doing, like, if you're gonna go to a G chord from C to G,
Right.
if you're making one
Right.
movement downward, the B fits, the D fits, but the F doesn't. I mean, I guess it does because it's the dominant seventh. But I mean, we're getting into like some really like theoretical stuff here. But you're absolutely right. Like, if you're just like, oh, I'm just getting this chord and moving it here and thinking that music goes like that, it doesn't work that way. And like you said,
Right.
being around horn players and knowing how to arrange that stuff, that's super important. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, especially you being a producer, and you know, and when people come to you, you know, you said you have your own style, you do Tejano, and you know, whether it be Tejano progressive, Tejano conjunto, or Tejano brass, you know what I mean, or like
Brass,
orquesta style, you know, you have to be able to ready for whatever the customer wants, right?
Sure.
So let me ask you this, Rick. What's coming up? I know we already talked about an album. When do you guys think you guys will be back to like being on the road, or are you guys already on the road, or?
Not really. Man, I don't. As a matter of fact, this week I'm getting in touch with some of the promoters to try to reschedule these to see when they're ready to bring us back. I don't know, brother. I really don't know. We had a gig this past weekend we had a gig. It was a private gig, and they chose not to cancel. And there weren't very many people. But they got they got their party. They had a fraction of the people that I think the hall was only allowed 50% or something. But a lot of people didn't go to this event because of the virus. So who knows? I really, to be honest, I don't. I wouldn't be surprised if we don't gig. If things don't, if things don't pick up till next year, I won't be surprised if the rest of the year is just kind of, you know, it just doesn't look too good. People don't want to go out. And actually, the virus looks like it might be spreading again. It looks like there's going to be an uptick in cases here because everything reopening and all that. So who knows? But one thing we are doing is working on a new CD. So the good thing is we have time to put out new material.
And you were saying that's going to be more progressive. Is there anything else that you can share? I know you want to kind of keep it, kind of a secret so people could be surprised and stuff like that. But is there anything that they can expect to hear? Anything that we should keep an eye out for, or maybe some deadlines when you say, "Hey, we're going to drop our first single such and such date," or anything like that?
Yeah, we're not even that far yet because we had all these plans. Like I said, this year, we had all these plans to promote the CD that I just released in November, the tribute CD. We had a lot of plans to do. I had CD release parties scheduled and stuff like that, and it's just everything is just in the back burner now. Everything is just on hold. Everything's on hold. So it's kind of sad that we're not able to really push this new album. Like, we can do it online and stuff, but it's not the same like going in person and doing CD release parties and visiting radio stations and doing gigs and really hustling. It's not the same. You have to get out. You can't just post your music and expect it to take off. You got to do the legwork. It's a physical thing as well as as well as social media. And so we're kind of just parked right now. But we are going to release a new single from our album coming up here real soon. Working on that. Going to get a hold of the radio station to do a release. So we're going to be releasing songs probably for the rest of the year. Maybe towards the end of the year we'll have this new album released before the end of the year. But in the meantime, we'll be releasing music from the new album that we just did. So. Yeah, my hope is to do an album every year. To do one album per year. That's my goal.
Those are good goals to have, man. Because when you start doing that, you get into the swing of things, and it becomes like second nature. You know what I mean? And then not only that, but it becomes more honed in. Because you're doing the same thing, and then it's like that inspires you to do something else different for the next album.
Yeah, and not only that, but you're developing your brand, you're developing your music, you're developing who you are, and I'm just what I like about you were asking what's the difference now between working with my band as opposed to working with Ruben. With Ruben, I was always arranging his style, and I was always arranging what he wanted, what he liked. That wasn't necessarily what I like. What I like personally is like old school chachos, verdad, los únicos, old school. That's what I like. If I could just get away with recording that, I would. But unfortunately, that's kind of it's old. But what I like now about having my own band is I can do whatever I want. If I want to put out a cumbia album, just nothing but cumbias, I'll do that, and I do plan to do that. And if I can do a conjunto, I can do whatever I want. And that's I'm enjoying my music now. Now that I left Ruben, I have freedom to do what I want to do. Like I said, this next album is I'm not going to be thinking commercial at all. I'm trying to make it really progressive. And I'm doing it for my own heart, for my own satisfaction.
Yeah.
Spoken like a true artist. Because I want to leave music. Because we're all going to die one day, and I want to leave this stuff for my family or for history, and that's all we're gonna leave. We're blessed. We're blessed that we can leave music behind. Once we leave.
And no disrespect to people who produce commercial material. I mean, that's great. You know what I mean? There's definitely an importance to that, but also like when you think back to all the innovators, right, of anything. It was never somebody who was doing
Follow
a
trends.
copy of
Right.
something. It was always somebody who
Right.
was like from here, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like, look at Esteban
Absolutely.
Jordan, Steve Jordan.
Hmm.
Even if you
He
think
did
of
what he
like
wanted to do.
the
Yeah.
Latin breed. I
Exactly.
mean, those guys were jazz cats that were playing polkas. I mean, that's really all that they
Yeah.
were. And they
Yeah.
weren't thinking of like, hey, do you think people will like this, or do you think they'll dance to it, or whatever? They
Hmm.
innovated a sound that was different. You know what I mean? That
Hmm.
spoke genuinely from them. And so, from like what I was saying, from like an artist perspective, for you to be able to put out music that's true to Rick, right? I think
Hmm.
that's gonna really connect with people because you're bearing your soul. You know what I mean? This is what you
Sure.
want. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And
Yeah. Yeah. And I think it's something that it's a release, a relief. We did all that commercial stuff. I did it for years, and man, I've been doing this a long time. I've gotten awards, Tejano awards, Grammy and this and that. I'm not tooting my own horn or anything, but I've done all that. I've done the whole thing. I was playing Tejano music when it was in its prime, and in the '90s, man, I got to tour all over the country. I got to play big shows at the Reliance Stadium, and we got to do a lot of big shows. I got to travel to Japan, to Europe. We did a lot of really cool stuff. And now, I just want to make music that I like, and so it's really cool to have that freedom now, to have my own band and record whatever I want to record,
mm-hmm.
and to speak to the doing commercial music. I do plan to go commercial one day. We do plan to do that. I'm just not ready yet. I just have these goals. I had this goal of doing a CD, that tribute CD to my dad. That was always a dream of mine. I have my next goal is to put out excuse my language, but a badass CD. Man, people go like, whoa, shit, like, whoa, what's this, man? This is way, and it's not going to impress the younger audience, but I think I don't really care who's impressed. I want to do it for me. I want to do it because I want there to be I want that music to exist. I
Yep.
just want it to exist because nobody's doing that anymore, man. The music nowadays, the kind of music, it's like, I don't want to talk down about it, but it's not the same anymore. You don't have that. You don't have that same musicianship anymore, and it's not as popular as it used to be. There are a lot of factors, right?
Mm-hmm.
But so that's my goal, is to do this hardcore Tejano CD, and then after that, I might do just cumbias, really Mickey Mouse, Ricky Dink, simple cumbias, and if it hits, it does. If it doesn't, I don't care. I got another album coming out after that.
I gotta cut in real quick, man. Well, real quick before I get to that, we got some other shout outs too. Toria Orona says, "What's up?" All the way from Phoenix, Arizona.
Phoenix, what's up, Tony?
Raul Nano Fuentes says, "Sorry so late, but what's good, Rick and Rolando?" He says, "I still love my Fuentes accordion."
Yeah. I traded Raul Nano. I traded him an accordion for one of those keytars, a keytar,
Oh, right
keyboard
on.
guitar.
Yeah.
Yeah, because we were about to do a music video, and I had just started my band. I wanted to try something different, and I had an accordion there. Yeah, he got a good deal. He got a good deal.
I bet.
I still haven't fixed the keyboard, by the way. It's still messed up, but yeah.
So
The volume knob was kind of not working too well.
So here's where I was gonna go with this. Okay, you were saying that that music these days, especially Tejano music, right? Is not what it used to be. Okay, and the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because this is something that we touched on when we had an interview with David de la Garza, and David de la Garza from La Mafia, and the first question of the night, it was the loaded question. I said, okay, first question, David. I said, who throws a better grito, you or Oscar? And he's like, me, all day.
Yeah.
and then that reminds me, the famous grito sample is Mr. Rick Fuentes, the one that every DJ has, the one that I had sampled on my keyboard for a little bit. That grito is Mr. Rick Fuentes. For those of you who don't that hear that grito, that famous grito everywhere, that's Rick. And I bring
you know what?
Go ahead.
No, I didn't mean to cut you off. You know that the DJs have that, and I don't even tell them anymore it's me because they don't believe me. They don't believe me. I remember one time when back in the day, there was a grito I think with Fandango that they were using too. There's a couple of gritos out there, and Stevie, it was a different Stevie D, Stevie Rincon. They call him Stevie D. This guy from Dallas, he was a DJ and a promoter. He was playing there one time at this club in Dallas, and I went up to him, "Hey man, that grito, that was me." And he goes, he just looks at me like that. It's completely ignored me. It's okay, man, whatever, you know. But he didn't believe me. But and then so you know what I did? So I uploaded it to YouTube a couple of years back, and I put my name on it. So this is me. I don't know if you've seen that, but it's on YouTube. And the cool thing about it is I can't do gritos like that anymore because you know that was about, I think that grito was about 15 years old or so. But I still use it for my recordings. I still throw it in. I throw it in my recordings, and other bands use it. They literally have put it in their studio recordings. You know.
As a matter of fact, we got a message right here. Michael Ibarra says, "Got that grito on the Nosotros album." I think that they gave you credit for that, and
but, they gave you credit for it. They sure did.
Yeah. And so here's where I was getting with that. This is the whole point of the grito. Okay, is that I think, and we talked about this with David. I think that today's music, what it lacks, is animo. And I think that, like, when was the last time you heard a song that was so badass, and then, like, the only thing you could think of is right at that moment it needs, like, a big grito, just, like, from the soul, you know what I mean? Like, music doesn't have that anymore. It's all about, like, okay, this is the intro, this is the whatever.
Yeah.
There's nothing that, like, hits you right in the soul.
Soul is not there no more, man.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. That soul that hits you,
soul.
like, regardless if you're, you know, Chicano, Norteño, Tejano, whatever label you want to put it, you hear that and it's just like, you know, you just like sueltas el alma, you know what I mean? Just like boom.
Yeah. And you know what, man? I think that's something that you're born. I think that's something it's in your soul. It's in your blood, man. It's not like you can't teach. Just like when you just like the guitar strum in Tejano music, the guitar strum. I'm really picky on how you strum the guitar. To me, the guitar is the most important instrument in the polka because you can dance it, you can dance to that, to just the guitar by itself, right? On a polka, but that feel, that feel's got to be there, man. And you know, you can't teach that. You can't. That has to come from here. You can have the greatest guitar player in the world, and they just can't seem to have that right feel for it, you know. And again, you know, to me, the perfect song makes me want to do grito. The perfect song to me has the perfect strum, the perfect licks. You know, everything has to gel. You know, and that's what makes me do gritos. But you know, I think because times have changed and the music has changed, I think that soul is gone because these kids that are growing up playing music now, they don't know who Paulino Bernal is anymore. They don't know who these bands were from the, you know, Chacho, these guys. Paulino innovated a lot of that stuff, and those 3-part harmonies and the fancy arrangements and progressive accordion licks and all that. Oscar Hernandez and these guys, they were doing that back in the day. And Juancy Fuentes was a vocalist. I don't know if you heard of Juancy Fuentes.
Oh,
he
was
absolutely. One of the vocalists for Punto Bernal.
Yeah.
You know, he had that real heavy, you know, tú te me andas perdiendo y vuelves de nuevo a buscarme la cara. And they had that real heavy vibrato. And nobody even sings like that anymore. Like, nobody sings like that anymore. You know, and it's like, you know, I mean, what? Nobody even has even heard that stuff anymore. You know, these kids that are growing up playing the music, they don't, you know, unless they grew up, unless their parents are musicians and their parents influenced them, you know, with Jesse Serrata and Little Joe and these guys, the old school musicians. But I just think nowadays, you know, the kids growing up, it's another era now. Music, everything changes, you know, everything changes. Music changes, and so, you know.
Tony,
I'm not going to change. I'm going to do what I want to do.
Right. And so Tony Orona says the problem is the lyrics, that there's no more great hardcore writers, and I do agree with that to an extent. Yeah. And here's the only this is the only disagreement that I have with that. Okay, is that a polka, a genuine good polka, can give you that same I need to throw a grito sort of feeling. You
Yeah,
know what I
we
mean?
know that makes sense. That
And
makes sense.
so like there's so many aspects to music, but I do think that even if you have a great song, I mean, I'm speaking from a musical perspective, right? And you have words that don't have the correct grammar, that
Mm-hmm.
somebody's mispronouncing the words or whatever. And like I said,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not criticizing anybody, right? But it's not authentic. And here's the thing: I think what's missing, if you want to connect with somebody's soul, it has to be authentic, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
let's take food for example, right? Food, you can go somewhere and be like, yeah, the food was good, right? Like, I don't know. Let's just take and these are all, I'm just using it for sake of argument, guys. I'm not
Mm-hmm.
actually like saying whatever. But if you go to Taco Bell, right? Like you say, okay, that burrito didn't taste bad. I mean, it's beans on a tortilla,
Right.
whatever. It's like when you're hungry, you're hungry. You
Right.
eat it, and it's like, hey, it wasn't it wasn't a dead animal on the side of the road. It
Right.
was it was something that's in your belly. It tasted okay, whatever, right? It's
Yeah.
technically speaking a good meal, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it's not grandma's cooking. And
Mm-hmm.
even if you were to get
Mm-hmm.
all those ingredients that grandma did and you try to do it just like, it's not going to have the same authentic soul
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
you could tell somebody measure it, by the measurements, doing exactly
Yeah.
right. But if it's not coming from the soul, if it's not coming from the heart, then there's nothing there. You know what I mean? And so like, even like I said, even if the song's good, even if okay, let's say that the song is actually a good, well written song, the grammar's well, it has good melody, it's got a nice hook and stuff like that. If the performer can't, you know, what's the word I'm looking for? Like, push that out from their soul, right? Broadcast that through their, their emotion, then, the song itself, it's dead in the water, and I
Yeah.
think, and I,
Yeah.
maybe that's what
Yeah.
it is. And that's the thing, is that the people who are listening to music aren't thinking like on a technical standpoint, like we think, like, oh, they said that word wrong, or that they're off on their pitch or anything. The performance is sloppy. It could be anything, right? What people do realize is when it's something heartfelt. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Because I mean,
Yeah.
like I said, we're not being critical. We're just kind of talking about things that have happened. I mean, look at Mas, right? Mas had a song called Decidelo, and I had this discussion with one of my friends, and they said I ruined that song for them because I love that song, right?
Ah.
But the song says
Uh-huh.
"No quiero que te robe otra mujer." I'm like, okay, so does that mean I don't want another woman to steal you because she's lesbian,
Right.
or
Right.
or is it a girl singing to a guy and they just kind of, you're like, hey, we're gonna sing it like this,
Right.
or was it something that
Right.
was mispronounced at the time? But listen, that aside, right? Like, the lyric was wrong.
Mhm.
There's no denying that. Grammatically, it was wrong. But they played it with so much animo and so much authority that when that song came out, that
Uh-huh.
to this day, like, that's like, let's get up and dance. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? And that's what I'm
Yeah.
talking about. Like, sometimes it's not about being
The
technically
melody, man.
proficient.
The melody's
The
what it's got a
melody,
hook to it, man. You know.
exactly.
When I was, my home musician when I was growing up playing music, I never ever paid attention to the lyrics. Never did until shoot later on, man. Later, way later, I never. I didn't care. I had no interest in what the words were saying. I just liked the music. It moved me. It just moved me. The way they vibrated their voices, the way they harmonized, the way I didn't really pay attention to the lyrics until much later when I started arranging and producing for other people, and that's when I started to really pay attention to lyrics and stuff. But a lot of times, a lot of Tejanos don't even speak Spanish, man. There's a lot of Tejanos that don't really speak great Spanish, especially north when you get to Dallas and go north of Dallas. A lot of the Chicanos are their Spanish is.
Michigan, Ohio.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So a lot of times, people don't pay attention, but now, the songs that nowadays it is about lyrics though. Nowadays, it is the lyrics and stuff. So, you know, we're gonna say there aren't very many good songwriters anymore.
Yeah.
Jose Alfredo's gone, Agustin Lada's gone. All these guys, you know, that were awesome, they're gone.
Yeah, even like some more modern, like in the golden era of Tejano music, like Luis Silva has passed.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so, I think what needs to happen though is that I think people need to maybe, I don't know, what do you think? Do you think that we should start doing Spanglish Tejano music? I mean, if it's reflective of the culture, right? And nobody speak. Well, I shouldn't say nobody. I mean, I speak Spanish, right? But you know, if it's indicative of what's happening in the culture, do you think that Tejano music should move to a bilingual or maybe some English only sort of thing? Or what do you think?
That's a good question. I don't know. It wouldn't hurt to try. It wouldn't hurt to try anything. I mean, what?
Mhm.
You know,
I mean,
it wouldn't hurt
look at the
to try
Zydeco
different things.
guys. The Zydeco guys from Louisiana, they speak French, but a lot of the music that's coming out now, because they don't really speak French much anymore, do it in English.
Right.
But
Right.
anyways, I just kind of wanted to get your input on that. But you know what? We've been
Yeah.
talking for like about an hour and 20. I know you got to get back
Oh, cool.
home and everything.
Yeah.
And
Hey man, this was really cool. I'm really glad that I really appreciate you having me on here, man. This is really cool. I really like the topics. You really got your questions are really good.
thank you.
But yeah, we got to get back. We're gonna get back on the road, headed to Clovis,
Okay.
New Mexico, and taking care of some stuff over there.
I appreciate
And
you taking your time to do this. And you already know that the door's always open for you here on Tejano Keyboard.
Thank you, man.
Yeah, is there anything you want to like put out, your plug there for people who want to get a hold of you, or where they can?
Yeah, yeah. So again, I'm Rick Fuentes. Brown Express is the name of the band, and we are on Facebook. We have a YouTube channel as well, Rick Fuentes and the Brown Express. We are on YouTube, and look us up. Look me up on Facebook. Ricky Fuentes. It's Ricky Fuentes on Facebook. Ricky Fuentes and the Brown Express, and look us up. We have, we're just some humble, just a humble guy here, just trying to put out Tejano music. I'm going to continue putting it out. Mientras que I'm healthy and I can do it, while the Lord lets me, I'll be putting out music. And we have CDs for sale. We have this tribute CD that we just put out a few months back. And I have, re-recorded 20 songs of my dad that he recorded back in the day that were hits for my dad from Brown Express. And this is the CD. Look. Thank you, babe. Look, it's a double disc CD. And I'm going to send you one, Roland. I'm going to send you one.
I'll send you my address so I can check it out.
Yeah,
Man.
please do. And it's a double disc. This one's falling apart. It's a double disc. It has 20 songs. So check it out. The guest artists on this album.
Arturo Montes is on there, right? Is that the one with Arturo
Pardon?
Montes?
Arturo Montes, yes, man. Arturo Montes. Yeah, I mean, he rests in peace.
Yeah.
This album has it's a duet type album. It has 20 songs, double disc. It has Shelly Lares, AJ Castillo, Ruben Ramos, Little Joe, Roberto Pulido, David Lee Garza, Luis Martinez, and Alberto Gallegos Jr. Chentes on there, Savannah Motion, Ben Osuna, David Farias, Monica Fuentes, my wife, she's on there. Gary Hobbs is on there. I'm really proud about having Gary, because Gary doesn't. I don't recall him ever doing anything with anybody else, so I'm really honored to have Gary Hobbs on here. I'm honored to have everybody. Tina Martinez, Nick Martinez, Joe Posadas on there, Cesar Martinez, Eddie Perez, Luis Pacheco, Laura Leal, Arturo Montes, Ramon Flores, the original singer that my dad had, he used to sing with Chavela. He's singing a song here too. So we have a bunch of guest artists. Max and Josh Baca, the Tex Maniacs, are on here too. And it's a great album. It's called Tribute, and this is what it looks like. We're pictured on a train.
Awesome.
See, the original album that my dad did of Brown Express, their very first album, they had a song called My Connect Uno. That was their first hit. And they took a picture on the train. They were on, so we did the same thing just to pay tribute to my dad. We got on a train at Sunset Station in San Antonio. So you can get this at brownexpressmusic.net.
Awesome.
Brownexpressmusic.net.
Jesus,
and we have T-shirts, and
I'm sorry,
CDs, and all that stuff.
Yeah, I was gonna say Jesus Herrera says my name's on there too.
Yeah, he mastered it. Jesus mastered it.
Awesome.
Yeah, he mastered it. Yep.
And well,
awesome.
Hey, if you ever need a guitarronero, remember that way I can be on one of your albums one of these days.
I have two songs for you. We did a couple of mariachi tunes. As a matter of fact, one of them is on Facebook, on our Facebook page, and one of them, Monica and I, we sing a song a mariachi song that was originally done by Carlos Miranda and Laura Canales did a song, and we did it. So and then yeah, I'm gonna send it to you so you can do the guitarron.
Cool, man. I got it. All right.
And then I'll record something for that. I don't know if there's anything I can do for you. You know, you're way more talented than I am.
Man.
But hey. I appreciate that. Thanks again, Rolando. You're awesome, man. You're a stand-up guy. And say hello to the missus, man. And,
Thank you. I'll do that.
God bless you, brother. And keep it going. Dude. Keep doing everything you're doing, man. For La Onda, you're legendary. You're gonna be a legend one day too, man. Like, your music is. Dude, you're one of the guys that's gonna keep our music going, man. You're one of the guys that I can count on one hand who can keep our real authentic Tejano, and you're one of those guys, man. And I appreciate you for that, man.
Coming from you, that you made my night, man. Thank you.
Oh, thank you, man. Thank you, Rolando.
And
thank you, man. God bless you, man. Love you, dude. Thanks for having me on, and y'all, everybody, stay safe, man. Stay safe.
All right, guys, that was today's interview. Right. Don't forget, next week we have Michael Ibarra from Ivan y Fuego. And stay tuned for the other interviews. Every Tuesday, we'll be right here. We'll see you guys.